Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on flagging operations on two-lane rural roads. My name is Mike Fitch with the Ohio LTAP Center here at ODOT, and we appreciate your participation. As we get started, please take a moment to locate the questions box in the GoToWebinar panel. During the presentation today, please use the questions box to send in any questions you might have. With that, we will go ahead and turn things over to Raymond Brushart. Hello.
Hello, Mike. Thank you very much for being our host with the most today. Good morning, everybody. It's Ray Brushart. I'm the safety circuit rider for the Ohio LTAP Center. And today we're talking about flagging operations on two-lane rural roads. But let's go over some housekeeping stuff here first. This is the second webinar on this subject this month, and we learned some things the first time around. One is that we send out certificates for this, and so I know not every person listening today is registered. This is one of those courses where sometimes we have a group of people watching it together in a conference room, and so if you all want certificates, it's important that you have a sign-in sheet. Um, Everyone print your name so I can actually read your name and then sign it and then have your supervisor sign it and then email that to me. My email address is on the screen right there, raymond.brushart@dot.ohio.gov. It's also on, you know, we have a handout you can download with all these slides today. And that will be on the opening slide of the handout as well. So we do have a few handouts for you to look at, and we'll be talking about those as I go along today. So I'm glad that you're listening listening to this today. We have this is a time of year where we have a lot of flagging operations throughout Ohio on our two-lane rural roads, and we just want to do our part to make sure that you're setting up your flagging operations correctly and that you're doing everything you need to do out there for you to be safe, and to also make sure that we're doing everything so that the motorists can be safe as well. So let's all keep that in mind. All right, so a little bit about flagging, flaggers. If you're the flagger, you're critical to traffic safety, and the consequences of improper flagging may be severe, and flaggers have some important responsibilities. And so the learning objectives for today's webinar is that hopefully you'll gain a basic understanding of flaggers' qualifications and responsibilities, and we'll learn about the necessary equipment and clothing or flaggers apparel, and we'll realize the importance of proper flagging procedures and the proper signs that are needed when you're flagging and where the flagger should be standing. And we'll also go over the uniform flagging procedures and how they are applied depending on the type of operation being performed. And we want you to get into developing some safety habits to maintain safe working conditions for your employees and motorists around and through the work areas. And we'll go over a quick method of how to design your flagging operation so that it will be the safest it can be for different speed limits. In Ohio, we have, of course, the highest speed limit on two-lane roads, and that's 55 miles per hour. But then we have some other two-lane roads that maybe they're only 35 miles per hour, or maybe they're 45. And we'll learn that the speed limit has a direct impact on how we set up our flagging operation. So why is flagging an important profession? It's because there's a lot of people depend on the flagger's clear guidance. And so here's a list of people that depend on the flagger. You have your fellow workers, the motorists, And maybe you have other roadway users like pedestrians or bicyclists. Maybe you're in a residential area, so there may be children around the street. And of course, you have to protect yourself as well as the flagger. So it's important that we follow standard and uniform flagging procedures, because when we do that, we increase the motorist respect. We need the motorist to respect the flagging operation and the flagger, and this also promotes a uniform response from the motorists, and it minimizes drivers' confusion. So basically, like I'm coming to you live today from Pickaway County. So, if you're on a two-lane, if you're setting up a flagging operation on one of our many two-lane rural roads in Pickaway County, the way it's set up should look identical to a flagging operation down in Scioto County or Miami County. I know we have some people from those places today, so or even Jackson Township. They should all look the same. And so that's the word uniform and standard. Those are important words. I mean, to come right out of our, I guess what you could call our Bible today, and that's the Ohio Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And, there's a typical application within the temporary traffic control manual, and you'll learn about typical applications and standards for each one today. So we'll learn why it's important to be standard and uniform. A little bit about flaggers. They must stay alert at all times and face oncoming traffic. You should not be up there mingling with the workers. You should have a good distance between you and where the work is actually taking place. You should be highly visible, standing alone on the shoulder of the roadway at the beginning of a cone taper. And we want to make sure that you're on the shoulder of the road out of the path of vehicles, and that you have you've already planned an escape route if someone is not obeying you. And not just anyone can be a flagger. You need to pick somebody that has the ability to communicate instructions and the ability to maneuver quickly and the ability to control signaling devices and to apply safe traffic control practices and the ability to recognize dangerous traffic situations and be able to warn others. We have some standard flagger equipment. We have the stop slow paddle that you see there in the picture. And the stop slow paddle is, it's got some new standards to it, a new design, and it's retro reflectorized for night use. But that the retro reflectorization is it helps it to really stand out during the daytime as well. It should be very bright. You should not be out there flagging with some faded old stop slow paddle. And there's different sizes for a stop slow paddle. The minimum size is 18 by 18 inches, but that's only for really low speeds and maybe low volumes of traffic. But the other size is 24 by 24. Now, if it was up to me, there'd only be one size, 24 by 24. It's like, why would you buy the small one to begin with? And this stop slow paddle is attached to a 5 foot to 7 foot high rigid handle. So it has two sides, a stop side and a slow side. The stop side looks just like a stop sign. It's got the white letters with a red background, and the other side is an orange background, like most work zone signs do, and has the black letters that say slow. Now, how about the use of flags instead of the stop slow paddle? Well, the temporary traffic control manual says that the use of flags should be limited to emergency situations or intersection work and low speed or low volume locations, which can best be controlled by a single flagger. So we'll talk about single flagger operations a little later. Here we have a picture of the preferred flagger location. He's standing on the shoulder of the road at the beginning of a cone taper, and it says never in the path of moving vehicles. So you should not be standing out there in the middle of the lane as you try to stop someone. You also want to have an escape route planned. And as we take a look at this flagger, we ask ourselves, can he escape quickly? And the answer is no, he can't. He's really blocked himself in here with his parked car. We don't like to see parked vehicles at the flagger station. That's maybe an errant motorist would crash into the car. So we want to have a good, and you should not be sitting down. So you want to have a clear escape route, and not have a fixed object there for someone to crash into. You know, a little bit more about that. We want to, like I said, we want to be setting up our operation with the safety in mind for everybody, not just the workers. So if we set up our flagging operation the way the manual tells us to, then we won't need some vehicle parked there for people to crash into. The crash doesn't end very well for the motorist. So we need to make it safe for the motorists and the workers. So we'll get into how we do that. How about this picture? It's important that the flagger really stand out. As soon as the motorist sees the very first sign, the road work ahead sign, he should also be able to look down the road and see the flagger. The flagger should really stand out. And so in this picture, we see a situation where the flagger does not clearly stand out, and there's several things wrong in this picture. So he's actually standing down inside the work area behind a dump truck, and he expects people to see him, and then he lets them know if they can go through and around the curve or not in his judgment. So that is not the correct method of setting up a flagging operation when there's a curve involved. So we'll get to that a little later. Here we have a flagger. He's standing inside of the cones in the work area, talking to probably a truck driver with his back turned to traffic. So that is definitely not correct. He should be standing well in advance of the work area. And here's a flagger with his back turned to traffic in the middle of the road. That's not how we do things. I've got lots of pictures of bad flaggers, don't I? So here's a flagger reading a book, sitting on a tailgate in the middle of the travel lane, and the stop slow paddle is jammed down into a cone. That's not correct. He's basically wanting everyone to stop. Sometimes we don't need everyone to stop. We can just slow them down. Also, he probably, I guess he's not aware that there might be distracted drivers. And so that's not good. And I don't see a cone taper there either. And of course, the other guy is, he got so tired that he's laying down on the job, but maybe that's not all his fault. We got to give our flaggers a break. We don't want the flagger to be out there in the hot sun standing too long so that he might pass out. So we got to give our flaggers a break and plenty of water and things like that. Okay, how about here? Again, we have a flagger in the middle of the road with her back to traffic, and a truck parked at the flagger station. Another guy's sitting down in the shade. So he's kind of, that makes him less visible to the traffic for one thing, so that's not good. Okay, so those are some good pictures of how not to flag. a little bit about flagger training. Whoever you pick to be the flagger needs to have good flagger training to be properly trained in safe traffic control practices. Uh, they don't have to be certified or registered in Ohio. So at this time, anyway, Ohio does not require flagger certification or registration. But if you want them to be uh, certified or registered, then you can visit some other uh, places that do certify flaggers, like ATSA, which stands for American Traffic Safety Services Association. They have a good website, so you can just Google ATSA, and they come to Ohio and do training uh, several times a year. And I actually took their flagger training and got certified, so it is a very good course. And then the Ohio Laborers Union offers training and certification as well. When you're flagging, it's important that we get the drivers to notice us and obey us. But sometimes drivers are tired or preoccupied. They got other things on their mind, and we're kind of they look at us and think that we, the flagger, are just in their way. We're slowing them down, but we need to get their attention and give them the proper guidance around our work zone and to protect our fellow workers. But controlling these drivers can be difficult. They want to make their own decisions. Everybody's in a rush today. Um, they want to be in control of the situations, and like I said, they think that we're just in their way. And but work zones can be prone to crashes. Crashes do happen in work zones, so it's important that we be able to get their attention and control them. Other factors that affect drivers' ability, maybe it's the road itself. There's curves and hills. The weather can affect the roadway. Sometimes in the early mornings and in the evenings, the rising sun or setting sun can blind motorists, especially if they have a dirty windshield. Maybe they won't even see us. Um, the driver's experience. Maybe it's a 16-year-old driver, and maybe they didn't even talk about work zones and things like that in the training that they had. Who knows what they teach in today's driver's education classes? Hopefully, they spend a lot of time talking about work zones, but I don't know that. So the point here is that we never assume that a driver sees you. So we need to do all we can to get their attention. So there's a lot of good resources to find information about flagger control. Um, inside the temporary traffic control manual is chapter 6E, and so there's a lot of information on there. I could actually show you um, portions of that. So this page right here is page 647 in part 6 of the OMUTCD. Part 6 is also called the Temporary Traffic Control Manual. Here's how the chapter 6E flagger control begins. It talks about qualifications for flaggers, and it goes into the a whole section on high visibility safety apparel that the flagger needs to wear. Goes into talking about your stop slow paddle, and it's got some standards which are in the bold letters. That means that you must adhere to the bold letters. Those are standards. You don't have a choice in the matter. You must abide by the standards. And it's got options to think about, which if you utilize the options, you're making your work zone as safe as it can be. And there's guidance. We call that the should condition. You should abide by the guidance unless you have a really good reason not to. Now, when you're on a high speed roadway, 55 miles per hour, you need to use the standards, guidance, and options that are listed there. like ODOT workers do. If you work for ODOT, you're going to use um, the standards, guidance, and options. For instance, you know, you know about the three signs that you need for sure in a flagging operation, but one of the options is the fourth sign that we'll learn about. It's called the "Be Prepared to Stop" sign. And so when ODOT crews are out there working on a 55-mile-per-hour 2-lane state route, we use that sign, and because it's been shown to provide more advanced warning, plus it lowers the number of crashes for it for that situation. So, but here's the just going over the fact that there is an entire section in the temporary traffic control manual about flagger control. And so all the information that you see on my slides come from that. And another resource I have is the one of the handouts. It's called a RON update, and we call that a RON update in Ohio LTAP. It stands for Route of Navigation, and basically it's a tech brief that kind of summarizes uh, everything I'm going over today, and also um, you know things like examples of the speed limit. 55 and 35. I show the differences on your design of your flagging operation in those two situations. So that's one of the reasons we have those handouts is for you to download and share with your employees. So in chapter 6E, you'll see that it talks about um, why and how we set up flagging operations, and it goes into detail about your signaling directions and how to stop, slow, and release traffic. So one of the things that we've done is created a simple way to remember everything you need to know about flagging. We call it the ABCs of flagging, where the A stands for advance warning, and B stands for be visible and alert, and C stands for control. So these are the essential aspects of any flagging operation. So, like I said, the OMUTCD um, is today's reference manual. There's 9 different parts to the OMUTCD, but we're interested in part 6 today. And part 6 looks like this. It's the temporary traffic control manual. And the 2012 edition is the latest edition. And something that you should know is that it's a state law that we abide by this manual. You need to abide by all 9 parts of the manual. There's a part 2 deals with your permanent roadway signs, like your stop signs and your signage for your curves, like the advanced warning sign for a curve, and then the big arrow in the curve and the chevrons, all that. Part 3 has to deal with your pavement markings on the roadway. They have to abide by that part. And then there's a part on traffic signals and a part on low volume roads and a part for railroad crossings and school zones and things like that. So each one of those things has its own part of the manual dedicated to it. But part 6 deals with work zones, otherwise known as temporary traffic control. And it says so, right? We have to abide by this manual because it says so in the Ohio Revised Code, which makes it a state law. So sections 4511.09 through 4511.11 of the Ohio Revised Code states that we must abide by this manual. So that's one of the main reasons that we need to set up our flagging operation correctly. The other side of that is that if there's a crash in your work zone, that could be the basis for a lawsuit. Maybe if you don't have it set up correctly, then your agency might be sued by whoever was in that crash. So it's another important reason for you to know that. So you should never just go out there and kind of wing it with your own design of a flagging operation. You should you need to set it up the way that the manual tells you to set it up. So inside this manual are about 46 different typical applications. And typical application number 10 shows us how to set up a flagging operation on a 2-lane road using flaggers. And so that typical application, it's only got 2 pages to it. The first page you see there on the screen, it's a drawing of the flagging operation, and it shows us exactly what signs to use and how far apart those signs are located with this. If we look down here, we see the distance A is the distance between the flagger and the flagger symbol sign, and distance B is the distance between the flagger symbol sign and the 1-lane road ahead sign, and C is the distance between the 1-lane road ahead sign and the road work ahead sign. And so it shows the placement of the cone taper and how the flagger is standing on the shoulder at the beginning of the taper. It has a vacant area between the end of the taper and the workspace. It's called a buffer space. And it shows where the work area is. In this situation, they're showing a curve. Maybe this is a horizontal curve or a vertical curve. But if you're working right around that curve, then you can see that the flagger and all the signs are in the straight area before that curve. And of course, you got the same signs in the other direction. So that's and we have the end roadwork sign as well. So that's actually a standard in a flagging operation. In some different work zones, it's optional, but when you're flagging, you need the end roadwork sign placed so that the motorist knows that they don't have to worry about any other flaggers. Then there's a page 2 of this typical application. It's the notes page. And this is where it lists the standards and the guidance and options. And so there's only one standard listed for a flagging operation. It says at night, flagger stations shall be illuminated except in emergencies. So if you're doing some road work at night, then the flagger station must be illuminated. And we're not talking about headlights from a truck. We're talking about a special light that shines down on the flagger. Then it's got some guidance. One of those talks about a buffer space. Maybe it should be longer in certain situations so that the 2-way traffic taper is placed before a horizontal or crest vertical curve to provide adequate sight distance for the flagger and a queue of stopped vehicles. Another guidance that's important that we definitely use at ODOT, it says, when used, the be prepared to stop sign should be located between the flagger sign and the 1-lane road sign. And then this is mentioned again in options. Up here, number 2, it says, number 3, it says, flashing warning lights and or flags may be used to call attention to the advanced warning signs. A be prepared to stop sign may be added to the sign series. So the be prepared to stop sign is listed in 2 different places on the notes page. So that should tell you right there that it's a very important sign. And again, if you're flagging on a high-speed roadway, then it really shouldn't be an option. It should be a part of your standard setup. And I know that, a lot of county roads and township roads are high speed. So those are some, you should heed my advice on that. So let's talk about the advanced warning area of our flagging operation. So this is the part of your setup that lets the public know that you are working out there. And you need to install your signs before you start the flagging operation. So let's take a look at our typical advanced warning signs in our flagger operations. The first sign that the motorist sees is the road work ahead sign. So if you work for a utility company or you're the utilities department of your local government, then you can also use the utility work ahead sign. The second sign that the motorist sees is the one-lane road ahead sign. And then the third sign in a typical flagger operation is the flagger symbol sign. You know, the old sign used to say flagger ahead, but you know, within the last 10 years, they've made it a standard to use the symbol instead of the words. And then, like I said, the be prepared to stop sign is optional. And we place this sign 1,000 feet before the flagger station. So that makes it, if you use it, then that would be the third out of 4 signs. And so another thing is we need to do all we can to draw attention to the signs. Like in this case, they've used their shiniest brand new cone to put right beside the sign, not in front of it, but beside it. You know, it's the newest design of one of the 28-inch cones, where it's you know, a bright orange, and it's got the 2 retro reflective bands around it. Here's a good
Ray?
picture of the advanced. Yes.
We
Yes,
do
sir.
have a question, and I've
All
copied
right.
that question into the chat box if you want to see it there.
Okay. Let's see. What is the definition of emergencies? In OMUTCD, other than my full-time ODOT job, I'm a firefighter, paramedic in North Central Ohio. Is our response considered an emergency? Yes, your response is definitely considered an emergency. And the trick is that if you're going to be out there for a while, then you know, more than an hour, I would say that, you know, hopefully you've got a good relationship with your road department or street department, and that you contact them when you're first on the scene and you've assessed the situation, and you can have them come out and set up a proper flagging operation or any other type of work zone, depending on what kind of street you're on. Maybe you're on a multiple lane roadway, um, or maybe it would be best served with some signs and an arrow board or something like that. But you do not use arrow boards on a 2-lane road, though. So yes, if there's a crash or something like that, that's definitely an emergency, or a fire or something like that. But you know, if you're going to be out there for over an hour, it's good to call your roadway department or county engineer's office or whatever, and have them come out onto the scene and set up proper traffic control. Okay, so here's a good picture of the advanced warning area in a low speed situation. These signs are 100 feet apart because it's you know, below 40 miles per hour. So 35 or less, you can have them 100 feet apart. But in the high speed rural areas, your signs need to be 500 feet apart. Or if you're in an urban situation, um, at lower, like 45 and lower, they can be 350 feet apart. So all of this is listed in a table. I'll show you that. Okay. So some other things about your signage, your advanced warning area. We don't want you to put signs on a sidewalk. You know, you don't want to block the pedestrians with your signs. They should be, you know, on the street against, you know, so that you're not blocking them. Um, and then also you want to place the signs in an area where they're not blocked by other signs or trees, or in this case, a utility pole is blocking the sign. So that's not a good place for the sign. So you want to make sure you put the signs in an area where people can actually see them from a distance. Some other things that have been studied, um, so that they add safety to your work zone and high-speed areas. There's been several things studied, but one of the things is they're called portable temporary rumble strips, and they've been studied so much that they've actually become uh, part of the standard flagging operation in the state of Virginia. And so we actually have um, a video. So one of the things I do as part of this class is kind of show off our LTAP web page. If you work for a local government, you should have our Ohio LTAP website saved on your favorites, and you should be very familiar with our website because we've got all kinds of great information for roadway workers and engineers, that are in charge of the roadways in their local government jurisdiction, whether you're a township or a county engineer's office or a village or a city. And so, as you can see, as you scroll down from our page, we've got a section. You can click on this to see what other trainings we have coming up, and you can get registered for them. If you need technical assistance or any other technical services, you can click on this. Got lots of good stuff there. You can take some courses through our e-learning, and these courses are free of charge. We've got somewhere around 300 different e-learning courses that you can take. And then we have our resources page, and if you click on our resources, let me show you what we have here. Lots of things on our resources page. You've got links to different places within ODOT, whether it's active transportation like pedestrian safety and bicyclists, and a link for free resources for heavy equipment training, uh, different safety countermeasures, especially for two-lane rural roads, um, stuff on highway safety, and then we have a direct link to the Ohio Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. So you can get to the temporary traffic control manual right here. Okay. We have an online publication resource database, all sorts of free publications. And here's a direct link to the other handout that we have for today. I call it the little green flip book, but it's the guidelines for traffic control in work zones. And you'll see, I can click on it. And then you can download it right here by clicking right there. And when you download it, it just pops up on your screen, and this is what your handout is. And so one of the things I wanted to show you was the table on page 17, which shows you right here. It is this table right here. So this top table here says recommended advanced warning sign minimum spacing. This shows you what the distances A, B, and C are on your typical applications. So you can see here in rural areas, your signs are 500 feet apart, and in your urban low speed, they're 100 feet apart. So that's where we get that information. And the spacing of your cones on a two-lane road in the taper, you got a maximum spacing of 20 feet. You can have them closer together if you want, but the maximum spacing is 20 feet in the taper. And then once you get past the taper into your buffer space and workspace, you're allowed to have a maximum spacing of 2 times the speed limit. And again, you can put them closer together, but that's the maximum spacing. And then we want you to have a downstream taper as well, to show people that they can get over and back into their normal lane. And that has a maximum. The cones have a maximum spacing of 20 feet. And then this bottom table shows us how to figure out the length of our cone taper. So it's broken down into a column here for 2-lane roads, and then the rest are for multi-lane roads. So on a 2-lane road for a flagging operation, our Our taper is called a two-way taper, and as you can see, no matter what the speed limit is, the length of that taper is 50-foot minimum to 100-foot maximum. So that's a lot different than a merging taper that you have on multiple lane roads. So a 55-mile-per-hour merging taper is 660 feet long, but still the flagging taper is 50 foot to 100 foot. And so, if we use the second and third tables together, we can see that, let's say we use a 100-foot taper on our 55-mile-per-hour flagging operation, and we come up here and see the taper, the cones are 20 feet apart. That would tell us that how many cones we need in a taper. In this case, it would be 6 cones, because 100 feet divided by 20 is 5, but we need another cone right at the flagger's feet, right at on the edge line of the roadway at point 0. So that'd be 6 cones that we would need just for the taper. So you can keep that in mind. But and then we can scroll down and we'll find typical application number 10 is listed on page. It starts on page 25 of this handout, and then the second page is on page 26 right here. So that's where you'd find the typical application. So another thing that we have on our LTAP homepage, I want to show you is we have our own YouTube channel. So if you scroll down to the bottom of our homepage, you'll see here on the bottom left is our direct link to our YouTube channel. And so we have all kinds of training videos you can watch, but one of those you can search for is the state of Virginia's portable temporary rumble strips. And you can also search for Virginia's flagging training. They have the best flagging training video. And so it's taken a long time for this to download, because that's what happens when you download things when you're talking on a webinar. It slows things down. But you can click on playlists, and then we have a search box at the top. So if you just typed in portable temporary rumble strips, then you'll see that when it downloads, you got the state of Virginia's a couple of different videos on those. And so it shows how to set them up and where you place them in advance of the flagger and all of that stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to quickly go over some really good resources for flagging that you would find on our website. The other handout you have is a RON update. You would find that under our route of navigation area under resources. So the point of this slide is just to show you that there's been a lot of research done for how to make flagging operations safer, especially the high speed ones. And one of the things that they've studied and has been successful in reducing crashes is these portable temporary rumble strips. So if you're going to be out there this year conducting a lot of flagging on high-speed 2-lane roads, you might want to think about using these rumble strips in your advanced warning area. So that's the advanced warning area. Then we get into our second part of flagging safety, and that's the B for be visible and alert. So this is where we talk about your equipment and proper flagger apparel. So here's a slide talking about the hazards of flagging. There's probably an average of 20 flaggers killed each year, because we need to realize that flagging can be dangerous. You get your high-speed traffic. This year, crashes caused by speeding has really increased. And so we have to look out for speeding drivers, get them to slow down. And you, the flagger, need to realize that it takes a distance, a significant distance for cars to come to a stop. So that's especially at 55 miles an hour or 60 when if they're going 60. And so as you can see, it takes almost 500 feet to come to a stop. So if in a surprise situation, you know, if a driver is speeding and they're distracted, then seeing you beside the side of the road, telling them to stop, that's a surprise situation. So that's why it takes almost 500 feet. So it's one of the reasons why the advanced warning area is so important, so that we don't surprise motorists as they're approaching our um, flagging operations, so they begin to slow down even before they see us. So here's another one, like I was talking about earlier. If there's a horizontal curve or a vertical curve, you should not be standing, on the other side of the curve. You need to be standing in advance of the curve. And as I was showing you, there is a section in the temporary traffic control manual that talks about the specific type of apparel you need to be wearing as a flagger. And so it has to be approved by the ANSI ISEA, which stands for American National Standard for High Visibility Apparel and Headwear. And so that's on page 647 of the Temporary Traffic Control Manual. So here's some examples of your proper apparel. Those are Class 2 garments, but some states actually require Class 3 garments now, like Virginia. They're always way ahead of other states in safety requirements. So a Type 3 usually means you have the trousers uh, with the vest. So these garments, they look like they would meet the specs, but they don't. So the only way you know for sure is if it says so on the tag of your apparel. See, this one says ANSI ISEA, and over here it says 2, so that this meets the Class 2 requirements. Here's an example of a Class 3 apparel. So she's got the trousers on, so he's very visible. So the tapers are shorter in length, as I was showing you, 50 to 100 feet maximum. So here's a drawing of the taper area. So we definitely need to have that taper there. As we go along and do some random inspections, we see a lot of times that the work zone neglects to install the taper, and the motorist can see that taper for quite a distance in advance, and to them it looks like a wall of cones across their lane. So it's very important that the cones are set up. So the other part of the ABCs is C for control. So we have to remember that a flagger is considered to be a legal traffic control device that must be obeyed. And you need to possess these 3 basic flagging skills: how to stop traffic, release traffic, and slow traffic. So the manual in your handout also has some good pictures of the proper techniques to stop traffic. As you can see, the flagger here has the stop portion of the sign directed at the motorist. If his right arm sticking straight out and his left hand raised, palm facing the motorist. So that's how you stop traffic. You don't need to wave the sign or anything like that. And then to release traffic, you're turning the slow part of the sign around, and you can use your left hand to point to the open lane. This also shows you how to stop traffic and release traffic with the flags. And here's a picture of our flagger stopping traffic. Making eye contact with the motorist is important. And then, of course, in today's world, everybody wants to drive a pickup truck or an SUV. So The problem with those in a flagging operation is that they block the view of approaching other motorists that are approaching you. So, once you have a large vehicle stopped and you know that they're stopped and the motorist is looking at you, then and only then can you move out to the center line, but not past the center line, and make sure that other motorists see the stop sign and you standing there. And then once it's time to release them, you have to get back to the shoulder of the road before you display the slow sign. So here's the proper way to release traffic. You show the slow sign. As you can see, the flagger is pointing out to the center of the roadway, and you're not waving the sign. Sometimes you don't need to stop traffic just to slow them down. So you want to show the slow portion of your sign, and then you're moving your left hand up and down to show them you want them to slow their speed down as they drive past you. And you're standing on the shoulder that whole time. So we don't want you to become a target. So you definitely don't stand in the middle of the road like this guy is. The most common flagger setup is the two flagger operation, and so communication between the flaggers is essential. So you either need to be able to see each other and communicate with signals, or have two-way radios, and one flagger is usually in charge. So here's the drawing of the typical application again of the flagger operation, showing the two flaggers, where they stand. And you'll notice we only have the signs. There's no arrow boards. An arrow board would create crashes on a two-lane road, because once a motorist sees an arrow, they assume they have the right of way, and maybe they don't. Could be approaching traffic from the other side. So, and here's an example of how they're extending the buffer area around the curve. Okay, so communication between flaggers is very important, and maybe you can see each other. So you have the sight method, where you have your signals to each other for stopping and releasing, or maybe you have two-way radios, especially if you can't see each other. And then as a last resort, we have the flag carrying method. So in the sight method, both flaggers have visual contact at all times. And in the two-way radios, this is the most common for flaggers to have two-way radios, especially if they cannot see each other. And especially if you have multiple flaggers. Maybe you have a really long work zone that where you go past busy driveways, or or an intersection with another road, and you would have to have flaggers stationed at those locations. And we also, of course, advise you to have a set of fresh batteries with you. The flag carrying method is where the first flagger hands a flag to the last car that's allowed to pass, and then that driver hands the flag to the second flagger at the other end of the work zone and that's how the other flagger gets the all clear signal so that they can release traffic. We have another resource for you to check out if you need to set up a really long work zone, like if you're on a township road or county road where you're resurfacing or chipping and sealing a roadway, and you want to do it at a mile at a time. Then the ODOT Office of Roadway Engineering has a good resource for you. You find it on here. You have you go to the ODOT Office of Roadway Engineering's page. They have all kinds of work zone resources, but one of those are they have a lot of standard construction drawings for work zone setup. So that they kind of look like the typical applications, but they're set up as a plan sheet that you'd see in a set of construction plans. So one of these has when they get down here to the flagging portion, they have a couple different methods. So here we have it. Here it is. So it says flagger closing one lane of a two-lane highway, a stationary operation. Then the next one says flagger closing one lane of a two-lane highway for paving operations. That's not using federal dollars. Um, so in that case, you could open this up by clicking there. And so this drawing shows a good setup here. If I zoom in, you'll see where the flagger's standing. It shows where the roller is and the spreader, like if you're chipping and sealing, and the supply trucks and things like that. And it's broken up here in the middle. And it says maximum length of closure, 5,000 feet. And so they've actually put a lot of thought into the chipping and sealing operations for townships and county roads. And it shows the signs and things like that. And there's a notes page here with more information about it, about site distance and sign locations, intersection driveway access that you need to read about in those long driveways. So just wanted to point that out to everybody that there is a resource for that. Office of Roadway Engineering. Okay, well, anyway, so I'm really getting running out of time here, but the other thing I wanted to talk about is single flaggers. Sometimes you have a really short work zone, the length of your work zone, and you can get by with just one flagger, but you have to meet these conditions. Just for low volume, good visibility in both directions, and you're only going to be out there for an hour tops. And it says low speed, so in that case, here's a picture of where the flagger is standing. The flagger is standing directly across from the work zone. Again, it's a short work zone, and the motorists from both directions can see you. And so in that case, here's the cones, and you've got cones at your feet to draw attention to you. You've also got those other signs. So the other one is like I talked about a few minutes ago about multiple flaggers, where you have flaggers stationed at intersections and things like that. Another special situation is involving railroad crossings. So we obviously don't want to allow traffic to stop on the tracks. So you got your flaggers set up here to ensure that flaggers will not be stopped on the tracks. And then the other thing is, when nighttime, you must have your flashlight with a glow cone or lantern, class 3 garments, and your reflectorized stop, slow paddle, and auxiliary lighting. So here's an example of the light shining. So the other thing is about emergency situations and emergency vehicles. We have to allow emergency vehicles the right of way as soon as possible. But you, the flagger, need to decide if they actually have safe passage. You don't want to send them through there if you've got traffic already coming through there. So that's something to think about ahead of time. And emergency situations, we have to anticipate the unexpected, be prepared to respond, and also protect yourself. This type of emergency we're talking about is where drivers disobey your commands and go through they keep going through the work zone when it's not their turn and you got traffic coming the other way, or there might be a crash or accident. So in those situations, you need to notify your supervisor and call for help. But we still need you to control traffic at the same time and stay in contact with other flaggers. So these are things that you have to think about before you begin your job that day. And so to summarize the most important point today, stay on the shoulder of the road and have an escape route plan. How's that? So anyway, so that's my last slide of today's presentation. Mike, you think we have any other questions, or if anybody has questions, we can even unmute you, and you could even have the floor and talk if you'd like.
Ray, at this time, we do not have any additional questions, so thanks so much for presenting, and thanks everybody for your participation today. We appreciate it.
Well, don't say goodbye yet. Just a reminder, if we like to only send out certificates at one time. Otherwise, it creates a lot more work. It's longer for us to send out certificates if we get people, next week saying, "Oh yeah, I was in that class. I want a certificate." We want your sign-in sheet emailed in here directly after we hang up today. Okay, that way we can make sure everybody gets their certificates when all at one time. So that'd be really helpful. So really appreciate that. That's
Ray,
all
we
I have,
just
Mike.
we just had one question submitted by Brian, and I copied it into
Okay.
the chat pod for you.
All right. Let's see here. Is there a limit on the length of time that a contractor can temporarily close a road? No, because road closures each all have their different reasons for closing that road. So each one, maybe there's a bridge out or something like that, or an emergency road, a washout. There's no time limit on that. There's a different way to do that setup. You're closing your roads with barricades, and there's a whole section in the temporary traffic control manual about how to properly close a road. It has nothing to do with flagging. So um, you need to read up on that, but it's, you need to communicate um, with different agencies when you're closing a road for a long time. Who owns that road, and you have to have permission from that person. And we got emergency services that need to know that there's a road out so they can plan ahead. I don't know. I just advise you to read the temporary traffic control manual about where it talks about road closures. Okay,
Ray,
so what do you
I'm
suggest? I see that. I see that. What do you suggest for a moving work zone, as in stringing cable? A mobile work zone has its own typical application as well, and a different section in the temporary traffic control manual. If you're on a mobile operation on a 2-lane road, that would be typical application number 17. So you need to read all about that. And plus, I have a RON update that you can check out under our resources page of our LTAP page. And I did a RON update on mobile operations on 2-lane roads. So that should be pretty helpful to you as well. And, sometimes a mobile operation sounds like a good idea, but if you have a really curvy road and hilly road, it may not be the best or safest work zone. So those are some things to consider. Um, you can do a flagging operation, or you can do a total road closure maybe to talk about but you have to talk to whoever owns that road, the county engineer or township trustees or the state. Okay. What else do we have here? How long can contractors leave signs up after work is complete and they have left the area? We have contractors that leave signs up all night. Well, preferably if the road is open, then the signs are gone, because we don't like to mislead the public. Um, you know, um, maybe there's a special meeting to have with the contractors when they're getting close to getting the job done, or have a notes page put in there, a paragraph in the notes page of the plans that talk about when to take the signs down. Or probably the best case is to have your own project manager that works for the your agency on the job. I don't know. These are all good. So I guess the answer be to put the sign, take the signs down as soon as possible, or at least cover them up. Maybe they don't have the resources to take the signs down at the time, but maybe they can at least cover them up. So maybe that helps. Is there a minimum cone height for the taper? Yes. There are standard sizes of tapers. Um, we don't want you to use the little 18-inch cones on a high-speed roadway. You should be using the 28-inch cones, or maybe you have even bigger, the 42-inch cones that are wider, wider and fatter than the real skinny ones. Those are the only ones we want to see out there, and they definitely need to have the 2 bands of retro reflectivity. Do all entities have to give a 14-day notice of closure or just ODOT? I don't know the details on that one, but I would have a discussion with whoever owns that roadway. There's different reasons for the amount of time that you have to give. There's project work that's not emergency. It's a planned work, and then there's the emergency. So obviously, if it's an emergency, there is no time lengthy ahead of time. Where do I get the sign-in sheet? Well, hopefully, if you're sitting in a conference room, you just make up your own sign-in sheet that shows the name of the class and the date, and you can have a list, preferably typed list of the attendees, and then have each attendee sign it, and then have it signed by the supervisor. That would be all I would need. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. Do you, Mike?
I don't think so.
Again, we're going to have, if you had people miss today's course, we have it. If you go to our Ohio LTAP YouTube page, you can search for our flagging course, and you can have them watch this on their own. Or, like I said, the state of Virginia has a good flagging training video as well.
All right. Thanks, Ray, and thanks everybody for your participation today.
All right, everybody, be safe out there. That's the main thing. Thanks for participating today.